This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. 1-800-610-7035, worldwide toll-free. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. Whitney Houston passed away. They found her lifeless body in a hotel room bathtub. The last person who saw Whitney alive saw her 1 hour before. The final result? Drug and alcohol. Bad mix. Now, several stars in the Hollywood area are saying that legislation should be harder when it comes to drugs. Joining me this hour is Dr. William Schneid. Dr. Bill is a criminologist. He's been actively involved in the field of law enforcement for over 40 years. His assignments included internal affairs, narcotics task force, as well as patrol and investigative duties. Bill is retired from law enforcement as far as being a police officer is concerned, and he is currently the Director of Special Operations for Apex Strategic Investigations Group, a licensed international private investigations firm in Los Angeles and Riverside counties. We're going to be talking to Bill this hour about the Whitney Houston case and the similarities in past cases over the recent couple of years, including that of Michael Jackson. Bill, first of all, welcome to the X-Zone. We've got about a minute before I have to take my break. It seems that, once again, we have a star who has access to money, a lot of money, doesn't have to go around seeking the underworld when it comes to drugs, and we find another young star dead.
Well, I think these statistics will continue through the years, as is prevalent in people who have limited coping mechanisms to deal with life and everything that's thrown at them in the heels of stardom.
Bill, you and I have to take our first quick break. We'll be back in 2 minutes. X-Zone Nation, if you need the requirements of an international private investigation firm, highly professional, very reasonably priced, visit www.worldfind.biz. I'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
This is Johanna Carroll, host of Dialogue with Divinity on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. While walking along Kaanapali Beach in Maui this past year, I kept discovering all these shells and coral in the shape of hearts. My dialogue with Divinity was very simple. Do you want me to do a retreat to heal people's hearts in Maui next year? And of course, the answer was yes. As a master spiritual teacher, I am offering you a neat retreat called Rise, May 8th through the 12th, 2017. and the chance of a lifetime to rest at a 5-star resort for 5 days and experience a spiritual renewal of your heart and soul. Kaanapali is one of the top 5 beaches in the world. This stunning resort has undergone a $40 million renovation. I walked the entire property, checked out the room choices on your behalf, and I must say it is stunning. Our conference room faces the ocean with sliding glass doors. Maui is known as Mother Maui because it is a soft, gentle, healing energy. In the embrace of Mother Maui, you will feel yourself rising from the limitations of an ordinary life to an extraordinary journey of peace, bliss, and harmony, a greater sense of clarity. Our Rise Retreat ignites renewal in the sacred elements of air, water, earth, fire, and wind. There's plenty of free time to enjoy all that Maui has to offer. A small deposit is required now to reserve your space, as this retreat, it will sell out. For more details, please go to johannacarroll.com and register today. Aloha, and I'll see you in mystical Maui.
Welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. Dr. William Schneid is our special guest, and I made a foobar. Before we went to the break, I said something about Bill not working in law enforcement now, and I was corrected. Yes, he still does work in law enforcement, but he is also the Director of Special Operations for EPEC Strategic Investigations Group. 1-800-610-7035, worldwide toll-free. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. Now, following the death of Whitney Houston, Tony Bennett has called for legislation of hard drugs. Now, Houston would not have died, Bennett said, if drug users were not forced to hide. Now, Tony Bennett made his comments just hours after Whitney Houston's body was found in her hotel room. The 85-year-old singer, Tony Bennett, was speaking at Clive Davis's annual pre-Grammys party, which had been abruptly redirected to Houston's life. I'd like to have every gentleman and lady in the room commit themselves to get our government to legalize drugs, he told the star-studded crowd. So they have to get it from a doctor, not just some gangster that sells it under the table. Well, I think Tony Bennett should read the newspapers a little bit, because it was a doctor, in the case of Michael Jackson, that supplied him the drugs, and no gangster. But let's look at it from a law enforcement point of view. My guest, Dr. William Schneid, is a former police officer, detective. He's a criminologist. And Bill, will legalizing drugs end the problem?
Well, I think legalizing drugs simply takes the profit aspect out of hard drugs. But as far as eliminating a problem or even diminishing it, no, I don't think it would have any direct effect. I mean, we see that in our feeble attempt at legislating against alcohol. Mm-hmm. It obviously failed. And more people die from alcohol-related diseases in any given year than all other means of prescription drugs, illicit drugs combined. So there is a easy blueprint to take a look at Mr. Bennett's thought and see, what happened as a result of our attempts to legislate against alcohol.
Amy Whitehouse died of an alcohol poisoning event, and then Michael Jackson was killed by the effects of a legal drug administered to him by a doctor. So what is the latest on the Houston death?
Well, basically, there's a number of ancillary tragedies. I mean, her daughter, Bobby Christina, who's 18, was hospitalized twice since her mother's death, and suicidal at that. And she was admitted, I think twice in 24 hours. And so when somebody dies, of course, there's a ripple effect to the family. In Houston's effect, she was on the brink of bankruptcy, having spent, her fortune literally on crack cocaine. So she had a definite drug and alcohol problem. This lethal cocktail that she had of prescription drugs and alcohol, that's just about a guarantee of a fatality. Xanax and alcohol just simply do not mix. And depending on how much alcohol she consumed, given her body weight, her tolerance levels, it doesn't take long to become a lethal dose. And I'm sure this wasn't a suicide by her. She was. This was just an incredible accident that we've seen over and over and over again. And I think part of the issue is the fact that if you just look backwards, even slightly beyond Michael Jackson, you have Lindsay Lohan going in and out of rehabs over and over and over again. So the cure for this is basically it's an incurable disease that continues to be cunning, baffling, and powerful.
There are people who are using the example that 10 years after decriminalization in Portugal, drug abuse is down 50%.
Well, first of all, you have to look at a societal issue, because you can you can use the example of Holland and say, we're selling narcotics openly at government-approved stores, and we don't have a drug problem as such. Well, that's unique to that society's construction. They attempted to legalize heroin by prescription only in London for the UK, and that was a dismal failure. So, so much of this is dependent on how society is structured and the various taboos and coping mechanisms that members of that society have. But I would hardly, put up Holland as the sterling example of why there should be world legalization of drugs.
Their group Anonymous is promoting on their website and through press releases to the media that the war on drugs has done more damage to society in the last 50 years, more than any other single thing. It has produced global organized crime that is now almost unconquerable. It has sucked billions of dollars out of our budgets that could have been spent on better things. It has exploded crime in prison populations. It has criminalized private behavior in a terrible and damaging way. It has eroded our civil liberty and everyday freedom to an enormous extent. It has fueled and financially terrorized people and countries all around the world, second only to the poisonous effects of present-day issues, war issues in brackets. And then their final comment is it has been the craziest and most self-destructive campaign ever followed by any civilization in history. And I wish these guys would learn how to write and read and spell. It was awful. So where do we take it, Bill? You and I have talked many times about the drug war presently going on between the United States and Mexico. We know that harder drugs are coming in from overseas, into the United States via Canada and via the ports. As someone who is deeply involved in law enforcement and the protection of life and property, how do we cope with this problem? It seems that it's not getting any better.
Well, I think you have to declare a war on drugs, not just placate society with words. It's interesting that the president of Mexico, when offered help from our military to stamp out these cartels that are responsible for almost 40,000 civilian deaths as they war amongst themselves, refused. The president's specific quote is, "We will not have American boots on our soil." And so that's a clear message to us. But what is our message to them? I would venture to say that a platoon or two of the United States Marine First Recon units could take out the cartels in a matter of weeks, then move to Colombia, take out those cartels, and we're done with the cocaine pot problem for the time being.
Well, isn't this the exact same thing the United States has done in Panama and Bolivia, taking out the cartels?
Well, they've done it to a greater degree in those countries. Mm-hmm. The problem is in when we're looking at Mexico is the whole political strata and society. You have two classes, the rich and the poor, and Mexico has long been greased by the underworld's financial bribery system. And that's just a fact. It impregnates all levels of government. What other government anywhere in the world has police chiefs assassinated, judges assassinated, prosecuting attorneys assassinated at the rate that they do? I mean, you never hear of that in the United States.
I would imagine that Mexico's only second to Italy.
Yes, I would agree. I would agree.
Yeah.
And again, it's when you talk about the Cosa Nostra, when you talk about the Russian mafia, mm-hmm. I mean, you're talking about highly organized, financially well-funded groups of people that have endless supplies of money to bribe endless officials. So it makes it very, very difficult to infiltrate them and stamp it out. And at the same token, even in Afghanistan, where the Taliban are growing opium fields, you can't look at the Afghanistan people that are growing it and say, well, we're going to substitute alfalfa.
Yeah.
No, there's more money in opium poppies than there is alfalfa.
When we look at Whitney Houston, we look at other stars who have either passed away on drugs, alcohol, a mixture of both. We hear of so many stars going into rehab, and it seems that they go into rehab, and I would imagine they're not treated like the normal people that go into rehab. And could this in itself, Bill, using your expertise, be one of the problems, is that when they're in rehab, they're treated differently than the others who are there?
Well, it depends on the rehab. We have the so-called luxury rehabs in Malibu, California, mm-hmm. that cost anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000 a month.
Wow!
With your own private chef and down pillows, and basically it's a luxury suite that has a therapeutic component to it. But mm-hmm. you're on vacation. Then you have the harder core programs that don't treat everybody equally and don't feed you in the lap of luxury. That being said, that doesn't reflect statistically that the harder core programs have any greater success rate than the luxury programs. It's just more of a environmental ambiance. But I think we're young in the recovery business as to try to figure out, what is it that we need mm-hmm. to be attacking in order to elicit some level of recovery at a higher percentage than we're currently getting. And I think part of it is that we haven't found that explosive genetic component yet that we can develop a pill for and say, wait a second, if you attack this particular gene, mm-hmm. this is the gene of addiction. I mean,
all right,
we know that addiction...
Bill, I've got to take my break with the news. Please stand by. Dr. William Schneid is our special guest. www.worldfind.biz. We'll be back after.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Bill, I was wondering if you could take us through what happens when dispatch or the operator at 911 receives a call, such as it was in the emergency call case of Whitney Houston. What is the procedure that is followed by most law enforcement agencies?
Well, normally it's tape recorded, of course, coming in on a 911 line. If it's a suspected drug overdose, the paramedics are initially responded along with law enforcement. It's considered a medical emergency, so they do go with red lights and siren. If it's a situation when the paramedics get there in which they seem to require life support, they'll notify the nearest emergency room or trauma center that they're on the way with a critical patient so that they're ready to receive the patient. And law enforcement, meanwhile, will secure the scene as a crime scene, gather any evidence of pills or narcotics, place them in evidence bags, seal them, and continue searching the premises for any other signs of illicit drugs. And the coroner is notified. The body cannot be moved, assuming they're dead at the location. The body cannot be moved until the coroner responds. Other than that, it's considered a coroner's case at the hospital if death occurs at the hospital.
Now, I know that the coroner has his own staff of investigators, and what is the jurisdiction of a coroner's investigator? Are they law enforcement officers, or are they under the coroner?
Well, they're under the coroner, who's under the sheriff, because it's county law enforcement. And basically, the body is the property of the coroner's office and cannot be moved, even if it's a case of a homicide, until the coroner is done with their photographs and their examination of the body. And then at that point, it's turned over to the homicide team that's usually at the scene as well. But once the body is taken into the custody of the coroner's office, the toxicology exam is all done under chain of evidence control, and it's dealt as a criminal escapade. And so everything having to do with handling of evidence and interviewing folks involved with the case is handled by the coroner's office to determine the cause of death and how the death will be declared. In other words, in the case of Michael Jackson, it was declared a homicide. Now, you may say, well, he wasn't murdered. No, homicide is defined at the death of the hands of another, the other being the doctor. So once that is established, that ends the involvement of the coroner's office. Then law enforcement takes over if there's the possibility of criminal prosecution.
At what time is the body released to the family?
When the coroner's done with their autopsy, then the body is released. I understand Houston has already been flown back to New Jersey.
Wow. Now, why is it taking so long for some of the toxicology reports to come back? The reports are saying that the coroner won't have the results for 6 to 8 weeks.
Well, they have preliminary results. In other words, if I test a living individual or even the blood or urine of a deceased individual, I can have the results back today. And the coroner will get preliminary results. However, they have their own laboratories, their own backups, just simply due to the volume of deaths that come under their purview, that it just backs the whole system up. But they already have an idea of what somebody has died from. They just don't want to release that information at the moment, so they give a blanket 4 to 6 week period. But I can assure you they already have preliminary results to the toxicology report.
The fact that Whitney Houston's body was removed from the bathtub and placed on the floor, and apparently people tried to resuscitate her, does that hamper the investigation of the coroner or subsequently the homicide detectives?
Well, in her case, not really, because on an examination of the deceased lungs, you would see whether or not she aspirated water prior to death or after death, whether or not water was forced down her. So the absence of water present in her lungs, or quantity of water absent in her lungs, would suggest that she died and then slipped underwater as just simply a normal process. But that death wasn't due to drowning.
Now, you were saying just a few seconds ago that because of the number of cases that the coroner has to do, they have their own labs. How many cases a year would the L.A. coroner have of people?
I would imagine you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of cases. Wow. Because remember, the coroner gets involved in cases in which there is no attendance of a physician within 10 days. So a coroner's case doesn't necessarily have to be criminal. Mm-hmm. It has to do with the last or the period of time that's lapsed when the patient was last seen or the deceased was last seen by a physician, and if that physician is willing to sign the death certificate as to the cause of death. So that automatically becomes a coroner's a case. Now you imagine the thousands of people that die every year that die without having a physician in attendance or in a hospital setting where there is nobody to sign that certificate. So those people automatically fall under the coroner's purview, and literally the coroner's office is so overextended they have bodies in the hallways.
How long does a normal autopsy take, Bill? From the time the person is put on the table to the time that they're removed from the coroner's table?
It depends on the pathologist and what they're looking for. Mm-hmm. If we assume they're not looking for bullet fragments, etc., it could easily be done in an hour or less.
An hour or less. Now, are all bodies that are brought to the coroner's office autopsied?
Normally, yes, or they wouldn't be a coroner's case. Okay. In other words, the coroner may decide that the cause of death was an auto accident, mm-hmm. and the person expired at the hospital due to blunt force trauma, and that was evidenced by the attending physicians, and that perhaps was sufficient to satisfy the pathology department of the coroner's office, and they just, allow it to be that. They don't necessarily have to know that they died from a ruptured spleen, unless they get very anal about this stuff when there's suspicion of a crime, obviously. You can be guaranteed that body will wind up at the coroner's office, if there's any suspicion of foul play.
Is there any reason why a judge would issue a writ to stop an autopsy at the request of the family?
I would think strong religious grounds. Mm-hmm. This is a guess off the top of my head.
Right.
Or a preponderance of evidence that the person died from a particular ailment or having nothing to do with a criminal environment. It's not in the it would have to be an overwhelming petition by the survivors to convince a judge to stop an autopsy.
We were talking about I guess we can call them the hotel suites of certain drug rehab places that are around. And what's the difference between someone succeeding in drug rehab and someone being a repeat return guest to a drug rehab center?
It's so simple, it's almost ridiculous. It is 100% dependent on the patient's desire for sobriety.
Then how come so many people fail, Bill? Is it because they're weak? Is it because of other problems that lead them back to the bottle, lead them back to the pill, lead them back to the pipe? And what can society do?
It has nothing to do with weak or strong. It has nothing to do with willpower. It has everything to do with developing new coping mechanisms to deal with this condition we call the human condition. Sadness, happiness, every emotion that you can think of that people that are non-addicts, non-alcoholics can deal with on a routine basis that is just overwhelming to the addict or the alcoholic. And until those coping mechanisms are in place and substantial, the brain will do anything to pursue pleasure and the avoidance of pain. And if the brain knows that alcohol or these pills or that shot of heroin will get itself out of pain, it will go that route. So that's what the addict or alcoholic is consistently fighting, is the pre-programmed information that the brain has how to cope with life's conditions. And to reinstitute, I use the simile of saying, this is, if you're right-handed, me teaching you to use your left hand. This is not going to be an easy thing. You're going to object to it, but eventually you'll get the hang of it, and you may even like it. But you're not going to do it willingly. And that's exactly what's facing the addict or alcoholic in recovery.
In your over 40 years in law enforcement, Bill, what would you say the increase percentage-wise is in the death of people caused by alcohol and or a drug?
Well, as I said earlier, alcohol is definitely the number one killer, and we'll consider alcohol a drug because alcohol is. Now, if we separate from alcohol drugs, I would say statistically we're talking probably about a similar statistic as, say, 5-10 years ago. The only difference that we have over the past, couple of generations or decades is new designer drugs come out, a different viewpoint from society, more experimentation. We have a greater usage, both in Canada and the United States, of marijuana. So we know that even though marijuana isn't a gateway drug to stronger drugs, we also know that your judgment is impaired. And when your judgment is impaired, that's what causes you to be susceptible to the suggestion by somebody that you know to try a different drug.
And of course, I'm sure over the 40 years that you've been in law enforcement, you've seen a decrease in the age of people using drugs and or alcohol.
Oh, I've seen them as young as 10 and 11.
Oh, my Lord.
And it, again, a lot of that has to do with the demographics of society that these kids are in. These kids come from homes where they're a single parent, and the single parent is a crack addict. And, there's all kinds of miserable stories. Keep in mind, nobody begins their addiction or alcoholism saying, I want to be an addict or an alcoholic. That comes into play in a statistic of about 1 in 5 will become one. Now, how you pick that 1 in 5, we still haven't figured that one out. But we know that there's a genetic predisposition that if a member of the family is an addict or alcoholic in some respect, could be a foodaholic, a workaholic, whatever, it's going to be a higher propensity for their offspring to be subjected to some form of addiction. And that's our difficulty, is we still have, we're playing at addiction control. We haven't quite got it down yet. And so we keep thinking that what we're doing is correct, which is, to a certain degree, the whole definition of insanity. Is we keep doing the same thing over and over again,
expecting a different
result, and that's not happening.
Bill, we've got to take our final break. Please stand by. Exonation, Dr. William Schneid is our special guest. He's a criminologist. He's also the Director of Special Operations for Apex Strategic Investigations Group. www.
In over 36 years in law enforcement, I've learned a few things. The most important is the proper gathering and preservation of evidence is vital to putting the bad guy behind bars. It's no different in the world of paranormal investigation. Whether it's the search for the afterlife, cryptozoology, extraterrestrials, and UFOs, how we gather that evidence of their existence, preserve that same evidence, and present it to a court of our peers will make the ultimate difference in proving the existence of worlds and entities that are beyond our imagination. Come with me on a journey that seeks to prove with undisputable evidence what man has struggled to believe for centuries. Join me, Larry Lawson, host of the Paranormal Stakeout, coming to the X Zone Broadcast Network. Check out the broadcast schedule for Paranormal Stakeout with yours truly, Larry Lawson, at www.xzbn.net. For more information about me, my travels, and my team, check out our website at www.paranormalfbi.com or join us on Facebook at Florida Bureau of Paranormal.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Dr. William Schneid is our special guest, Exonation. He is the Director of Special Operations for Apex Strategic Investigations Group. And if you need the services of a professional private investigation firm, whether it's for commercial purposes, consumer purposes, industrial, whatever, if you need a investigation agency with a worldwide reach, www.worldfind.biz. As always, Bill, great talking with you. The drug situation that is not seen on mainstream media because, it's not Whitley Houston who's having the drug overdose or, being killed as a result from the mixing of booze and drugs or whatever the case may be, goes on day after day after day after day, and it's the people, the first responders who see this firsthand. Bill, how do first responders like yourself react when you hear these stories that the media plaster on front pages on prime time concerning the stars? Shouldn't we also tell the stories about the small person, the unknown, who is part of this problem as well?
Well, I think the biggest problem is that we don't, as a country, spend enough money in drug education, needle exchange programs, the kind of stuff that does have an impact. And we're a bankrupt country and the voters are given these hell's deals of, do you want a needle exchange program or books for inner city schools? Well, that's not really a fair choice.
Yeah.
So until our government wakes up and decides to do something positively in a more proactive way than just showing eggs frying on a pan, I think we're going to be watching the status quo just continue and the body count escalate.
But what about legislature? Shouldn't the politicians be doing something? Shouldn't they be getting more actively involved with working with the judicial system to find out what is wrong with the system and then correct the problems that they find in the system?
Well, we're already dumping inmates out of the prisons in California that were sentenced only for drug offenses. So, you can't. You try to legislate human behavior, but you really can't control something that's a disease. It's like giving sex offenders longer sentences. No, a sex offender will tell you that unless you castrate me, I will keep coming back to prison. And so it's not curable by legislation. The disease of addiction and alcoholism is not curable by legislation. You've got people out there convicted of drunk driving half a dozen times.
Yep, definitely.
That, it still doesn't matter. Until you address the root issue, the root problem in this society, it's just not going to change anything.
Well, listen to this. The top cop in the Toronto Metropolitan Police Force responsible for the RIDE programs went to work the other day with smelling of alcohol and acting impaired. The officers under him contacted headquarters. Headquarters sent over an investigator. The investigator told the inspector that he had to go home. An investigation's underway, but I guess this is just part of the problem. And, this is one time when I must take my hats off to the media for bringing this to the people's viewpoint, because now the people will see that, hey, it's just not us where this problem lies, but in the people who are supposed to be rectifying the problem as well.
Well, we just had a chief of police of Redlands, California, left a strip bar drunk in a city car, hit a bunch of other cars, and was ultimately,